Tonight, a woman on a dark road locking eyes with something inside a glowing sphere. Small figures landing in silence, taking animals and plants, then vanishing without a trace. A simple drive that became missing time, distorted reality, and a warning it wasn't over, and the possibility that something intelligent may be moving beneath our oceans. Welcome to Strange Encounters. On a cold November morning in 1973, a woman driving home through rural New Hampshire claimed that a glowing orange globe followed her car for miles, and inside it, staring back at her through an oval window, was a face she would never forget. She almost never told anyone about that part. In the newspaper reports, she mostly spoke about the light, a strange object in the sky, a feeling of panic, a desperate run to the nearest house for help. But later, when investigators sat down with her and carefully retraced the route, a far stranger story emerged, one involving missing time, a sense of paralysis, and a humanoid figure watching her from inside the craft. This is the Lyndia Morel encounter. At 2:45 in the morning on November 2nd, 1973, Lyndia Morel finished her shift at the Swedish sauna in Manchester, New Hampshire, where she worked as a masseuse. It was late, quiet, and by all accounts, an ordinary end to an ordinary work night. Before heading home, she stopped at Ben Roy's restaurant on South Willow Street and had coffee with a friend from work. They sat there for around 45 minutes, talking over 2 cups of coffee before parting ways. Afterward, Lyndia crossed the street to a gas station, bought $2 worth of gas, and began the drive home. She crossed the Merrimack River by way of Queen City Bridge and headed northwest along Mass Road, Route 114A, toward Goffstown. It was somewhere near Pinardville, on the outskirts of Manchester, that she first noticed it. Off to her left and slightly ahead in the sky was a large yellow light. At first, she thought it might be a bright star or a planet. It flashed red, green, and blue, almost like the way a star can twinkle low on the horizon. She even noticed another yellowish object nearby that was probably Mars. She kept driving. After about a mile, she looked again. The object was still there, in the same position, but now it seemed brighter. As she approached the intersection of routes 114A and 114, she lit a cigarette and happened to glance back toward it. The light went out. That struck her as strange. Planets do not simply switch off. For the first time, she considered that it might be a UFO. After passing the intersection, the light returned in the same place. Further along, near the Hillsborough County Nursing Home, it disappeared again. A couple of cars passed in the opposite lane, heading toward Manchester, but otherwise the road was empty. Then, near a railroad crossing, the light came back, brighter than before. For the next couple of miles, it seemed to pace her car, always keeping the same position. As she reached the outskirts of Goffstown, where the town lights began, the object vanished again. It briefly reappeared, then disappeared once more as she drove through the lit downtown area. She turned onto North Mass Road, and there it was. This time, it was no distant light. It was directly ahead of her, low, close, and waiting. Later, she described it as an orange and gold globe, almost translucent, covered in a honeycomb pattern of glowing hexagons. On the upper left side was an oval-shaped window, paler than the rest of the object. Colored beams of red, green, and blue seemed to flash from somewhere inside it, and the entire thing gave off a thin, high-pitched whine. She said the sound did not just reach her ears, it passed through her body like a vibration, creating a tingling sensation from head to toe. Then came the fear. Lyndia said she suddenly found she could not take her hands off the steering wheel. Her eyes felt drawn toward the subject. She had the overwhelming sensation that it was taking control of her body and pulling her car toward it. She later described it like a magnetic force, as though both she and the vehicle were being drawn in. At some point during this stretch of road, she experienced what she called a loss of memory. There was a section near a church and West Lawn Cemetery that she could not remember driving through at all. One moment, she was staring at the object, and the next, she suddenly realized where she was again, moving fast, much faster than she normally drove, with the object now even closer. Its size had increased dramatically. She estimated it was now no more than 500 feet away, perhaps less, hovering at about the height of a 3-story building. And then she saw the figure. Inside the oval window, partially hidden behind what looked like a dark horizontal panel, was a humanoid form. She could see the head, upper body, and arms. It appeared to be standing behind some kind of control board. The face was unlike anything she had ever seen. The head was rounded and grayish, with darker coloring on top. The skin looked wrinkled, almost loose, like elephant hide. There was no visible nose, no visible ears. The eyes were the part she remembered most. Large, dark, and egg-shaped, angled upward across the forehead. She said they locked onto her so strongly that she felt she could not look away. There was a mouth, a simple slit turned downward at the corners. No expression, just watching. She later said she somehow received an impression from it, not spoken aloud, but a feeling that told her, "Don't be afraid." That did not help. She was certain she was about to be taken. Panic took over. As she passed West Lawn Cemetery, she spotted a house ahead on the left. The glow became so bright that she threw one arm over her eyes and with the other turned sharply into the driveway. She drove partly onto the front lawn and stopped. Leaving the engine running and the headlights on, she pushed open the car door. At that moment, the homeowner's German Shepherd rushed toward her, growling. Normally terrified of strange dogs, she struck it across the mouth without hesitation and ran to the house. She pounded on the kitchen door, rang the bell, and screamed over and over, "Help me, help me, help me." She later glanced back and said the object had shifted position again, now hovering across the road as if still watching her. The high-pitched whine had become almost unbearable. After what felt like forever, but was probably around 2 minutes, the door opened. Mr. and Mrs. Bowdoin had been asleep upstairs. Mrs. Morel nearly collapsed into Mr. Bowdoin's arms, crying and trying to explain herself. She reportedly said, "Help me. I'm not drunk. I'm not on drugs. A UFO just tried to pick me up." Mrs. Bowdoin later said the woman was clearly terrified, wide-eyed, shaking, and covering her ears. Neither she nor her husband heard the strange whine Lyndia described, but they had no doubt she believed something had happened. Inside the kitchen, Lyndia slowly began to calm down. The clock on the wall read 4:30 a.m. Mrs. Bowdoin called the Goffstown Police Department. Patrolman Daniel Jubenville arrived at 4:40. He turned off the still-running car outside and listened to her account. In his report, he noted that she was badly shaken but showed no signs of alcohol or drug use. Later, they all stepped outside and saw a distant light in the sky that appeared to dim when a flashlight was pointed at it. But investigator Walter Webb, who later studied the case for APRO, believed that final distant light may simply have been the planet Mars. He was careful to separate that from Lyndia's close encounter, because Mars does not explain an orange globe hovering beside the road, and it certainly does not explain the figure in the window. Webb worked closely with Lyndia, along with APRO staff artist Brian James, to create sketches of both the object and the being she claimed to have seen. Interestingly, she had barely mentioned the occupant to newspapers at the time. She thought it would sound too unbelievable and ruin her credibility. So the public version became a simpler story. A woman chased by a strange light on a lonely road. The stranger version stayed mostly hidden. That detail may actually make the case stronger. People inventing stories usually lead with the alien. Reluctant witnesses often do the opposite. The Lyndia Morel encounter sits in an important moment in UFO history. Late 1973 was one of the biggest UFO flap periods in the United States. Reports were pouring in from everywhere. Lights, landings, humanoids, police sightings, radar cases. Public attention was high, and skeptics would argue that people were primed to interpret strange things as UFOs. That is fair. Fear, darkness, fatigue, and a lonely road at 4 a.m. can do strange things to perception. A bright celestial object, low on the horizon, can appear to follow a moving car. Panic can distort memory. Highway hypnosis is real. Those possibilities cannot be ignored, but there are details here that keep the case alive. Her route was specific and traceable. Her distress was witnessed immediately by multiple people. A police officer documented her condition, and the description of the humanoid came before the now familiar gray alien image became part of popular culture. It was not the standard alien of later decades. It was stranger than that. Maybe Lyndia Morel encountered a misidentified light, a fear-driven memory gap, and a night her mind shaped into something unforgettable. Or maybe, on that dark road near West Lawn Cemetery, something truly unknown paced her car and watched her through an oval window. Either way, one detail remained with her long after the headlines faded. Not the light, the eyes. The feeling that something inside that glowing sphere was looking directly at her and knew exactly who she was. In the autumn of 1954, something unusual was happening across Europe. For a few brief months, reports of strange objects in the sky began appearing at a rate that had never been seen before. Not just distant lights or fleeting shapes, but structured craft often described in detail. And more unsettling still, in many of these cases, there were occupants. The wave spread across multiple countries, but two regions stood out in particular: rural areas of Italy and France, where witnesses, often farmers, laborers, or children, described encounters that were brief, quiet, and deeply strange. There were no dramatic invasions, no clear attempts at communication. Instead, the reports shared a quieter pattern: small figures, landing craft, and actions that seemed oddly focused on the most ordinary things. What follows are 3 encounters from that period, each one short, each one isolated, but together they begin to form a pattern that is difficult to ignore. The first took place in northern Italy. On the evening of November 14, 1954, near the small community of Isola, a farmer was tending to his property when he noticed something unusual descending nearby. It was a long, cigar-shaped object moving silently as it lowered itself toward the ground. Sensing something was wrong, the man hid and watched. Moments later, a hatch or opening became visible on the object. From it, emerged three small figures. They were described as dwarfish in size, each one dressed in what appeared to be metallic suits, something like diving gear, reflective and unfamiliar in the fading light. The figures moved with purpose. They did not look around. They did not call out. Instead, they walked directly toward a set of rabbit cages on the property. The farmer watched as they began examining the animals, making strange sounds to one another, short, rapid noises in a language he did not recognize. At first, he remained hidden, but when it became clear what they were doing, he slipped away and retrieved a rifle. When he returned, he raised the weapon and took aim. That's when something changed. The rifle would not fire. At the same moment, it became impossibly heavy in his hands, so heavy, in fact, that he was forced to drop it. Then, without warning, he realized he could no longer move. He could not step forward. He could not call out. He could only watch. The figures continued their work, removing several rabbits from the cages with calm, deliberate movements. Then, just as suddenly as they had arrived, they returned to the craft. The object lifted upward, again without sound, and disappeared into the night sky. And as it did, the paralysis lifted. The man was able to move again, to speak again, but whatever had taken place was already over. Just under 2 weeks earlier, another encounter unfolded in central Italy. Near the village of Sanina, a farmer working his land noticed a strange object resting low in a nearby field. It had a similar shape, elongated, smooth, and clearly not part of any conventional aircraft. Standing near it were two small figures. Like the previous case, they were roughly a meter tall, dressed in tight-fitting suits that gave them a uniform, almost artificial appearance. They were not wandering aimlessly. They were focused. The farmer watched as the figures moved through the edge of his vineyard, appearing to examine or collect plants, pulling at vines, handling leaves, and placing their attention on specific areas of growth. There was no sign they had noticed him. For a moment, the scene remained completely still, quiet, controlled. Then the farmer stepped closer. That was enough. The figures reacted instantly. They turned, ran back toward the object, and disappeared inside. Seconds later, the craft rose into the air and departed at speed, leaving nothing behind. No sound, no trace, just the lingering sense that something had briefly interrupted their work. The third encounter took place in northeastern France, in a small village near Pernouillet-la-Châtive. The witness was a young boy, walking alone not far from his home. As he moved along a path, he noticed something ahead of him, an object resting low to the ground, partially obscured by the landscape. Near it stood two small figures. They were similar in size to those described in Italy, short, compact, and dressed in dark, close-fitting suits. At first, the boy simply watched. The figures appeared to be occupied with something near the craft, handling or inspecting the ground in a way that suggested purpose, though not urgency. Then one of them turned. It looked directly at him. What happened next was immediate. The boy was overcome with a sudden and intense sense of fear, far beyond anything he could explain. It wasn't just surprise, it was something deeper, something physical. He did not move closer. He could not. Within moments, the figures returned to the object. It lifted away quickly and was gone. The feeling passed almost as suddenly as it had come, but the encounter itself stayed with him. Taken individually, each of these accounts is simple. A brief sighting, a short interaction, no lasting physical evidence, but placed together, a pattern begins to emerge. Across different regions, different witnesses, different days. The same elements repeat: small, silent craft, small, silent occupants, and a consistent behavior that feels strangely practical. They are not observing from a distance. They are not attempting communication. They are arriving, carrying out a task, and leaving. The tasks themselves are what make the encounters difficult to interpret. Collecting plants, taking animals, examining the ground. These are not the actions people expect from advanced visitors. There's no clear logic, no obvious purpose, at least none that fits comfortably within human assumptions. And then there are the effects on witnesses. In one case, complete physical paralysis. In another, an overwhelming psychological response. In others from the same period, similar reports describe temporary immobility, interference with machinery, or an inability to act. Always brief, always controlled, and always ending the same way. The craft departs, and whatever influence was present disappears with it. The wave of 1954 eventually faded. The sightings became less frequent, the reports less detailed. But for a short time, across parts of Europe, encounters like these were being described with unusual consistency. No single case provides clear answers, but taken together, they leave behind something else, a pattern of behavior, one that feels deliberate, but remains just out of reach of explanation. And perhaps that's what makes these encounters endure. Not what was seen, but what was done, quietly, briefly, and without ever telling us why. In the early morning hours of October 27, 1975, two young men in rural Maine stepped into an experience that would defy any simple explanation. The case was documented within a day by UFO researcher Brent Rains, who interviewed both witnesses while the details were still fresh. What they described wasn't just a sighting in the sky, it was a sequence of events that seemed to distort time, perception, and even reality itself. The two men, identified only as P and W, were living together in a trailer near Norway, Maine. Both worked night shifts, so being awake at 3 in the morning wasn't unusual for them. That night, they were inside listening to music when they suddenly heard a loud sound from outside. Both later compared it to an explosion. They rushed out to investigate, but there was nothing there. No smoke, no fire, no movement, just silence. They stood there for a moment, trying to make sense of it. Then, almost casually, one of them suggested going for a drive. It was a simple decision, the kind you wouldn't think twice about. They got into the car and headed out toward Route 26, planning a short trip toward Lake Thompson, but they never made it the way they intended. About a mile into the drive, something happened that neither of them could explain. The car turned on its own. The driver still had both hands on the wheel. He could feel it in his grip, but the vehicle was no longer responding to him. It veered off onto a different road, one that cut through a more isolated stretch of countryside. There was nothing he could do to stop it. The car continued forward under what they both described as complete loss of control. And then something even stranger happened. The road they had turned onto was several miles long. Under normal conditions, it should have taken several minutes to travel. Instead, they reached the end in what felt like no more than 2 minutes. A song that had been playing on the radio when they entered the road was still playing when they exited. Neither of them could explain how that was possible. They continued driving, now both unsettled, but still trying to rationalize what had just happened. Not long after, they passed a field. There, a group of cows sat on the ground, all of them moving their heads slowly from side to side in unison. It was the only sign of life they had seen since leaving the main road. They kept going. A short distance later, they came alongside a large cornfield. Two bright white lights were shining from within it, casting beams out toward the road. At first, they assumed it was a truck parked in the field. They slowed to a stop, and then the lights began to rise. The object lifted slowly upward, clearing the tops of the trees that lined the edge of the field. As it rose, additional lights became visible, green, blue, and yellow arranged around its body. Then, just as suddenly, those colored lights went dark. The object was now fully visible. It was large, elongated, almost cylindrical in shape, and it was close. Close enough that they could clearly see its outline against the sky. The driver restarted the car and accelerated. Both men locked the doors and rolled up the windows as the object began to follow. They drove south, trying to put distance between themselves and whatever they had just seen. Then came the brightest light either of them had ever witnessed, and after that, their next clear memory was of the car sitting still on the side of the road. The engine was running again, the windows were partly down, the doors were unlocked, and they were both staring at each other. Something was wrong. Each of them later described the other's eyes as appearing different, orange in color, unnaturally so. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, they began to regain their bearings. The object was still visible in the distance. They continued driving. Eventually, they turned onto a gravel road leading toward Trip Pond. As soon as they did, the car died. The engine shut off completely. The radio faded into silence. They tried to restart it. Nothing happened. They were now stuck. Ahead of them, in the distance, the object hovered in the sky. At first, it remained relatively still. Then, it began to move. Slowly at first, rising and lowering in a controlled motion before ascending higher into the sky and holding position. They would remain there watching it for nearly an hour. Then something else appeared. Two smaller objects, disc-shaped, each one lit with red, green, and blue lights. They moved in coordination with one another, performing precise aerial maneuvers. At times, they drifted downward in a slow falling motion, like leaves carried by the wind. At others, they ascended sharply, changing direction at abrupt angles, as if climbing invisible steps in the air. At one point, they descended low over the surface of Trip Pond, skimming across the water before rising again. And then, the environment itself began to change. A thick, dark gray fog started to rise from the surface of the pond. It moved steadily toward them. As it spread, the landscape seemed to distort. The pond, which should have been some distance away, now appeared much closer, wider, endless, as if it had become an ocean. Features that should have been visible in the distance were gone, replaced by something that didn't quite match the physical reality of the area. The fog continued forward until it surrounded the car completely, and then, through the radio, a voice. Calm, clear, matter of fact, it simply stated that it was going to be a clear and sunny day. There was nothing threatening about the words, but in that moment, nothing about the situation felt normal. Above them, the larger object remained visible. Everything else was obscured. They sat there, inside the car, enveloped in fog, watching the sky. Eventually, as morning approached, the fog began to lift. The object was gone. At around 6:30 in the morning, the car started again, this time without resistance. They drove back. They had planned not to tell anyone what had happened, but the moment they stepped inside the house, something changed. Both men began to feel unwell, lightheaded, disoriented, their eyes burned, their throats became sore. They struggled to speak clearly. Their coordination was off. Breathing became difficult. Their mouths were extremely dry. At one point, one of them noticed something unusual in the mirror. His tongue appeared cracked, coated with a strange residue. The skin around their eyes had taken on a yellowish tint. And then, almost at the same moment, they both experienced something else. Not a sound, not a voice, but an impression, clear, unmistakable, a message that seemed to arrive all at once. They described it as being beyond language, but its meaning was understood. It told them that this was not over, that whatever had happened was going to happen again. 2 days later, there was a knock at the door of their trailer. One of the men answered it. Standing outside was a stranger, stocky build, crew-cut hair, wearing sunglasses and dark clothing. He asked a simple question, whether he was the one who had seen a flying saucer. When the answer came back yes, the man gave a warning. Keep your mouth shut. Then he turned and walked away. He was never seen again. The case was investigated immediately after the event, with interviews conducted while the witnesses were still trying to process what had happened. No clear explanation was ever found. What remains is a detailed account of a night where a routine drive turned into something far more complex. A sequence of events involving lost time, unexplained forces, and an environment that, for a while, no longer behaved the way it should, and two witnesses who were left with the sense that whatever they had encountered had not finished with them yet. The ocean covers more than 70% of our planet, and yet we have explored only a fraction of it. Vast regions remain untouched, unmapped, unseen. Temperatures drop, pressures rise, darkness swallows everything. Currents move silently, sound carries in strange ways beneath the surface, and beneath that surface there may be something moving, with intelligence, with purpose, and with intent. Reports have come from all over the world spanning decades describing objects that do not simply float or drift, but move with impossible precision beneath the water. In 1968, the Argentine Navy recorded one of the most unusual underwater encounters on record. Near the coast of Bahia Blanca, sonar operators detected a solid object moving through the water. At first, it seemed routine, but the readings quickly became impossible. The object could accelerate to speeds far beyond any known submarine. It could dive hundreds of meters in seconds, then reverse direction and rise almost instantly. Naval ships were deployed to pursue it. Sonar teams tracked it over multiple days. Anti-submarine measures were prepared. Depth charges were set in case of threat. Yet the object evaded every attempt to engage it. It maneuvered as if aware of every move the Navy made. Silent, precise, untouchable. Observers reported strange patterns on the sonar screens. The object sometimes appeared to hover, almost motionless, then darted away at incredible speed. It did not respond like any natural phenomena, not a school of fish, not a rockfall, not a submarine. By the end of the encounter, the Navy had only questions and no answers. Similar activity has been reported throughout the Caribbean and Puerto Rico. Fishermen, pilots, and coastal observers have described lights descending from the sky and disappearing beneath the waves without a splash or sound. In some cases, the objects rise from the water as suddenly as they appear, accelerating straight into the sky. Observers often note a strange stillness in the water, as if the surface itself resists disturbance. Some report brief ripples or strange wakes that vanish almost immediately. The objects are described as luminous, often bluish or silvery, and unnervingly quiet. The Puerto Rico Trench, one of the deepest parts of the Atlantic, has long been a hotspot for such activity. The ocean there plunges far beyond human reach, a place where something could hide, or perhaps maintain a permanent presence completely out of sight. Reports indicate the phenomenon has persisted over decades, with recurring sightings in the 1970s, 80s, and even into the 1990s. Despite modern sonar, deep-sea probes, and research vessels, these objects remain unobserved directly, always slipping beyond detection. There are also fragmentary reports hinting at something more direct. In 1975, in Santo Domingo, a woman claimed she and two of her nephews were taken aboard a craft by beings described only as humanoid. According to her account, they were transported, not into the sky, but down into a base beneath the ocean floor. She described an interior filled with strange lights, walls that seemed metallic and smooth, and equipment she could not recognize. She was reportedly examined by the beings, although no details were available about what the examination involved. And then, nothing. No follow-up, no other witnesses, no investigation. It is a weak story, frustratingly incomplete, but it echoes a pattern that continues to appear in other, better documented cases. The tantalizing possibility of an underwater presence persists, even when the evidence is fragmentary. One case stands apart for its sheer strangeness: the 1982 Lake Baikal incident in Siberia. A group of Soviet divers was conducting a standard exercise at roughly 50 meters below the surface. In the clear, icy water, they saw them. Humanoid figures moving with perfect control. Not human, nearly 3 meters tall, wearing tight metallic suits, smooth and reflective. Large spherical helmets encased each one. No tanks, no hoses, no bubbles. They moved effortlessly through the water, watching the divers approach. Every motion was deliberate, controlled, almost predatory. The divers reported that the water seemed to respond to them differently than normal, as if currents were being altered around the beings. The visibility was perfect, and they could see each figure clearly, yet could not identify any human features inside the helmet. Command ordered an attempt at capture. A net was prepared. The divers approached. Then suddenly, a shockwave or force struck them. Violent, immediate, unstoppable. The divers were forced to the surface far too quickly. Severe decompression sickness set in almost immediately. Several did not survive. Others were gravely injured, and whatever they encountered simply vanished, leaving only fear, confusion, and unanswered questions. No official record was ever released, no witnesses identified. The story survived only through rumor and later UFO literature. Across oceans, continents, and decades, the pattern emerges again and again. Object moving under the water, lights rising and falling without explanation, encounters with intelligence but no follow-up, and in rare cases, direct contact with beings adapted to the depths. The ocean is vast, unforgiving, and mostly unexplored. For all our technology, for all our probes, submarines, and satellites, we've only glimpsed the surface of what may be down there. The question remains, when something moves beneath the water with intelligence, with purpose, are they visitors passing through, or something that has always been here, hidden just beyond our reach, beneath the waves? Thank you very much for taking the time to watch and for supporting the channel. Every view, every comment, and every bit of support truly means a lot and helps keep these stories going. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I always appreciate hearing from you. I'll see you in the next episode of Strange Encounters.